All right, it's showtime. Welcome to Fun with Cars 716, another live stream. We got Mexican Spec in the house from representing Mexico. Now we just need some of our Canadian friends to join. We get Canada represented. I'm hoping that this time of day we might get some of our friends from Europe, England, maybe Sweden. Any of those countries would be great. I do have some content related to Volvo that has drawn some interest in Europe. So, because there's not a lot of content creators that do a lot of informative videos about Volvo specs or repairs. So, it's kind of interesting. So, had a very successful and interesting week this week, especially related to the 1937 Oldsmobile engine. If you've been here from the beginning, from when I first started doing live streams, you know a little bit about that engine, but let me just speak to it for those watching that may not be familiar. And I don't know that we have many people watching right now, but the 1937 Oldsmobile engine came to me in a Facebook post in Marketplace. Basically, it had the dog whistle call sign, "I would hate to scrap it." And when I heard that, I'm like, now we're speaking my language. So at any rate, I reached out to the person who listed it, Becca, and got to know her through conversation, know the story about this engine. So this 1937 Oldsmobile engine, her dad purchased in 1969 when the engine of his 1936 Oldsmobile went bad. And there, the car and the engine sat in his garage up until about, I want to say 11 years ago. Don't hold me to the time frame because my memory is not very good sometimes. But that engine the engine and the car sat next to each other in Cleveland, Ohio, until about 11 years ago. Her father sadly passed, and she inherited the car. So her and her husband brought the car from Cleveland, Ohio to Western New York. And then when she has younger kids, and when they were fairly young, they priced out getting that car fixed. And it ended up being more than probably what the car was worth, although I don't know the exact details. But bottom line is they didn't fix the car and they ended up selling the car. And then the engine sat in their barn for another 11 years until fall of last year, and that's when I acquired it. And I acquired the engine with the intent of getting it running again and providing content of, seeing if I could get an engine that hasn't run since 1969 to run again. I thought that was pretty interesting, and I've never worked on anything that old, that vintage. Little Runty is here. Want to show that. Say hi to the little Runty. And we're starting to, and Jennifer's here too. Hey, Jen. And so we got Michigan represented. We got Mexico represented. Little Runty, where are you from? Comment in the comments Go Chip 2.0 is here. Where are you guys from? Comment in the comment section. So bottom line is, you got the engine with the intention of getting it running again, just because they didn't want it to go to a scrap pile. Essentially, it was purchased as a used engine. So it was to replace an engine that was bad, which is legit. And anyways, I acquired it. I took some videos of it. And the next day I got a call from my very good friend who we go out, I've known for 30 plus years, and we go out to breakfast once a week. He and another one of my friends. He's like, "What are you doing with that Oldsmobile engine?" And I said, well, I told him the story, and he's like, "You're not going to believe this, but less than 100 feet from where I'm sitting, my uncle's 1936 Oldsmobile has been waiting for an engine since 1962. And I thought that was kind of incredible. So at any rate, I just this week got that engine to run, because he said, if you can prove that it runs, I'll talk to my uncle and we'll get that car out to you. So we just proved that the engine runs. For those of you that may not have seen it, I thought was pretty incredible. I'll play that in a little bit, maybe if you guys want to. But comment in comments where you guys are from. I'm in Western New York. We got Mexican Spec in Mexico, Jen's in Michigan, and Oklahoma City, I believe, OKC, and Goat Shift. So the engine runs, and I thought it ran good, although it smoked a lot because I soaked the cylinders down with oil. Obviously, the engine had sat for a long time. I did have an interview months ago related to the oil I was using, because the engine oil I always use is synthetic, and I wanted to put synthetic oil in it, and I got a lot of hate. Wow, the comment section blew up with, "Oh, you can't run synthetic oil in it." I'm like, synthetic oil is better. Tell me why I can't run it. And somebody was, watching the chatter in the comments and suggested that I watch some of the Motor Oil Geeks content, because he talks all about lubricants. So I said, one better, why don't I ask the Motor Oil Geek, that's Lake Speed Jr., if he wants to come on to a live stream with me. And he did. He accepted, and he came on, and we talked in length. It's in I made a video of it, and it's in one of my live streams. If you ever want to see it, it's very interesting information. He studies he's a tribologist. It studies lubricity. If I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but to make a long story short, that's his business. That's what he does. He studies lubricants. So anyways, I got that Oldsmobile engine to run. First time since 1969. It's the longest sitting, sleeping engine or car or anything that I've ever accomplished getting running again. I admire that stuff. Jenkins Motorsports is one of the guys that I follow. He finds these cars in the South that have been sitting for 70 years, and he gets them to run again. And I don't know, there's just something about breathing new life into some old equipment. You might consider it outdated. I know in the groups that I am on Facebook, the Oldsmobiles of that vintage that this engine fits in are considered the forgotten years. They weren't very popular. Not many people collect them. There's not many of them left. And I think they're interesting enough to spend some time in. I spent quite a bit of time with putting work into that engine to get it running. So without further ado, I wanted mainly, John and Mex maybe can comment on this. I want to see how this presents when I present this in the vertical live stream. So this is the 1937 Oldsmobile engine running for the first time since the year 1969. Dude! Anyways, that was a real high moment for me this week. It's got me motivated for a few other things, and it's something that I'm proud of. You may think it, I know there's a lot of smoke. I soaked the cylinders down, saturated them with heavyweight oil just because it's been sitting for a long time. I use automatic transmission fluid first, and yeah. Mex, I did want to comment that I thought about pull starting that engine. My buddy Mark and I were discussing that. He saw somebody do that with something, low compression engine. I did hook a rope up to the flywheel and pull it on the stand, and I could rotate it. And because that engine hit so early on, maybe I'll even make a fun video of that. The only thing is, if you pull it, if and when the engine kicks over, I don't know if that rope's going to turn into a whip, because it's not like a regular recoil where it can pull back in. It's going to be whipping around until it launches. So I don't know how to rectify that, but I thought that would be good content. And Dale's here. Hello, Dale. Sorry for the late notice. Oh, you can't stick around. That's all right. just was doing this on a whim. I just wanted to celebrate the win of getting that engine running after all those years. You don't think a 20-year-old could get that engine to pull over? I pulled it just to test it. I got, 1/4-inch rope or whatever they call it, P line, I think my dad used to call it. And I can pull the engine over, but the problem is you're only pulling 180 degrees. So if I can get 1 or 2 cylinders to hit on that 180-degree pull, then I think it will start up that way. And I think that's maybe one of the tests that I do, maybe for a short video this week, is trying to pull start an inline 6-cylinder. I think it would be fun to try. Hopefully I do it without the rope coming back around and smacking me in the head, because that would hurt, I'm sure. But it's just a thought. What do you guys think? It'd be kind of ridiculous. And ridiculous is kind of the things that I like to do. So I've never seen it done. I've only heard of a video. When we tried to find the video, I couldn't find it, where guys were pull starting an engine of kind of that vintage, lower compression. You got to figure that inline 6-cylinder engine is equivalent to like 6 Briggs & Stratton engines lined up. And if you're only pulling against the compression of one of those cylinders, now you have the friction of rotating mass, it's going to take more to pull, but the rope is also at a further distance from the center line of the crank. So you do have the mechanical advantage of, yeah, definitely putting a disclaimer on the video. If I do it, don't try this at home, right? Because it's kind of stupid. But I think because the mass of the rope is not really significant, and if I cut it at a point where I can hopefully have something where I can pull the engine over, get it to fire, and then it will shoot out of the flywheel. Because I was just going through it's a Chevy small block flywheel that I used to modify to get this old Oldsmobile engine to run. I got a lot of questions on that. Why are you doing that? It's not right. The application, when it goes in the car, will have the correct flywheel. The problem is the car is tucked away in storage with machines in front of it, and it hasn't been apart since 1962. It's still in the car, and I don't have anywhere where I can find a 1937 Oldsmobile bell housing. You need a bell housing and a flywheel flex plate for an automatic. But if you look at the back of the engine, I have a picture of the back of the engine. The back of the engine is only about, if you take your fingers and spread them out, that's about how wide the back of the engine, where it bolts up to the bell housing for the transmission. So it goes from that, and then it bells out around the flywheel and then connects to the transmission. That's how they did it back in 1937. I've never worked on anything with that design before. And because of that, there's no flywheel application that you can use without a bell housing, because the bell housing for the transmission is what mounts the starter. The starter mounts to that. To get all that lined up and to work properly, you would need the proper parts from 1937, which this engine didn't have with it. And my buddy Mark's dad, Mr. P, I'll refer, he was throwing out a flywheel flex plate for his car. He found some bad teeth on it. If you look at the flex plate, there's three or four teeth that have, grind mark in, where if you have an engine transmission out, they're cheap enough. You're not going to put that in because he doesn't want to have a problem starting his car down the road. But for this application, instead of it going in the scrap pile, absolutely, I'll modify that thing and get it to work. And I did. So that was even a question of whether it would even work, because the starter, it's supposed to be perpendicular to the teeth on the, if you're looking at it, it's supposed to be a right angle to the teeth on the flywheel flex plate. But because of the size of that starter, which is a 10MT, as I refer to it as, I believe that's the model of the starter. Then they went to a 5MT in the late 70s. But with it perpendicular, the teeth were too far away. So the only way I could do it was mount it at a slight angle. So you actually have the gears are not meshing very well, but well enough to get it to crank over. Yeah, Max, that's a good point. But some guys like to correct you, and I try to be as accurate as possible. Flex plate is technically what they call a flywheel, because a flywheel, if you picture a manual transmission, has a lot of mass to it. It has the surface of the clutch that rides on it. So, and it has the mass for rotation. So a flywheel adds mass. So a typical, my name's Jay, Jeremy. Thanks for joining us. Where are you coming in from? Where you live? So the flywheel flex plate debate is legit, and I do also call it a flywheel in both situations, although technically it's a flex plate, but it doesn't matter so much. We got quite a few people here hanging out with us in chat. I'd love to hear where you're all from. Please comment in the comments where you're from. We got Mexico, we got Michigan, we got Pennsylvania. Not seen any of my Canadian friends yet. And Max just mentioned should say something wrong, and everybody comments the good. Yeah, it definitely helps the YouTube algorithm. And I did want to speak to that. I thank you for everyone that. Oh, all right. Nisha Ellis is here from Louisville, Kentucky. You're in bourbon country. Love that. Thanks for joining us, Nisha. So the saying things incorrectly or controversial in each video would definitely help with the algorithm. And Jeremy's in Louisiana. But Jeremy's in Louisiana. So we got Louisiana, we got Kentucky, we got Michigan, we got Pennsylvania, all represented. So I appreciate you guys all being here. And Mexico is represented too. So now the next steps. Now we've got the engine running. The first thing I want to do, I did kind of test to see. Hey, Andy's here too, old friend of mine. I did want to see whether or not this engine's fuel pump was still good. I doubt it will be, but actually the fuel pump for the 59 Rambler, which hasn't run since 1980, actually appears like it will pump fuel. And I squirted a little bit of automatic transmission fluid in the fuel pump for the Oldsmobile, and it did squirt some back out. Whether or not it's good enough to actually pump fuel from the fuel pump up to the carburetor, I'm not sure, but I do want to test that out. So this week, envision this, if you think this would be a good short video, is to get that running on its own fuel source of some, because I did go through and clean the carburetor, so it should run good. And although it does not look like it in the video and it sounds a little choppy, it's because we're feeding it raw gasoline. It's not being atomized properly. And once it leaned out because of all the raw fuel we're dumping in and it ran out, you can hear it pick back up and run real smooth. With my hand on that engine, I really think it's going to be a smooth runner. It was hitting on all the cylinders. Keep in mind, those spark plugs are original to that engine. I did not buy spark plugs. Those spark plug wires are from at least the 60s, if not the 50s. Had not touched any of those. So the and Jeremy commented, yeah, camera in front of the engine. I could do that. I didn't. We only used the one. I had my son videotaping us from my camera phone just so I could get the event to happen. I do have this 4K camera, but the problem is it has horrible sound, even with aftermarket microphone, like a stick mic. And I did not want to miss that thing firing up for the first time in 55 years. So once I got it running, I felt like it ran smooth enough. So I thought to kind of run it long enough to see if the smoke should calm right down. I don't think it's going to burn mass quantities of oil. Against medical advice, if you were speaking in doctor's terms, I did run it on synthetic oil. It's got SuperTech synthetic 530 in it. And oh, I appreciate that. Jeremy said he liked and subscribed. I appreciate that. So I can show the the flex plate modification real quick, the flywheel, because that's something to be desired. We'll just say it is a whole lot of redneck built in. So
check this out. Slide over these studs, and it does. Last bolt is tight. Stick around, please like and subscribe. There's what the final assembly looks like on the engine. I think it'll run on the stand with this setup when I bolt the starter up right here, which I have in the trunk of the 1959 Rambler.
So trying a few different things there. Obviously, I was showing how I mounted a Chevy small block flywheel that was junk to a 1937 Oldsmobile engine, and then I mounted the starter as hokey as you can get to get it to work, so they meshed. Jeremy asked, what's my favorite car? My favorite car is Lamborghini in terms of liking the looks of them. The practicality of them, and I don't even think I don't fit in them well. I have driven one, but I don't fit in them well. Just like all my neighbors even got one, my Dodge Viper. Rented a Dodge Viper in Las Vegas years ago after winning a hand of cards, and my head sticks over the windshield, and driving down the I-15 on our way to see Hoover Dam, I got hit in the head with a rock off of a tractor trailer in front of me. Max mentioned that flathead V8 will run with one cylinder head off. That's interesting. I believe that, because flatheads do pretty much always run. GTR3. Jeremy, tell me about GTR3. GT3, Porsche 911 GT3. I've sat in and moved and whatnot. I used to work at a Porsche dealer. Max, you used to live in Las Vegas, I thought. Yeah, way to MacGyver it up. That was my nickname at the truck dealership I worked at, quite honestly. That was kind of fun. Jeremy said his favorite car is the AGTR3. I am not familiar with that car, so I got to do some research. Max likes the Ford Pinto. If you got one, would you paint the flames backwards like I see him? He said he lived in Vegas for 10 years, you know. So interesting. I was coming out of YouTube live stream school. We basically got invited to this classroom, boot camp they called it, to learn some different techniques on doing live streams and setting up times and network. I got to network with a lot of great creators there that I got to learn a little bit from. Even if they had different genres, I got to learn a lot from them. In fact, I learned more from the creators than I did from the school itself. It's not a knock against the instructor or whatever, or the presentations that we watch, but the creators do a lot of real world stuff that I was not able to know. Jeremy said that model is a new one. What brand or what manufacturer makes it? If you're new here, just joining us, please comment where you're from, what's your favorite car. I'd love to hear about it. Oh, here we go. Randy, you got, I missed you here. De Tomasa Pantera. That is an awesome car. I did see one or two of them in the flesh. Vice Grip Garage just got one from Ontario, which is 20 minutes from me, and drove it back. Randy said hello to everyone. And Max knows simplicity is the most important thing. Yeah, the Pinto is simple. I did just watch a video recently on the Ford Pinto, and they specifically marketed it to be an easy car to service, maintain at home. That was one of their selling points for selling the Ford Pinto. Although, as time went on and they were in the real world, they had some tragic accidents where people got hit from behind and then the car started on fire. And that tarnished the name for the Ford Pinto. But in practical sense, the car was made to be like an every person's car, to make it easy to work on and drive and maintain for the average person. And I think they were successful at doing that. When I think its downfall was the negative publicity, because the fuel tank was, at the rear bumper essentially, and the structure and strength of the car when it got hit from behind made the fuel situation, the fuel tank, very susceptible to fire. Early Pinto came with a tool that was like a 4-way screwdriver, and that tool, you could do a lot of things on it. Yeah, a lot of cars had a tool kit. I remember Subaru, I'm talking back when I started at the Subaru dealership in 1998, came with a torque screwdriver in the glove box in a little tool kit, and that was for taking on and off the cross rails, as I remember. The cross rails, and I think it fit maybe the air cleaner box. It had a few different things that fit. I think I even have one of those screwdrivers in my toolbox yet. It was just a torque spit driver. It wasn't anything fancy. So Max mentioned that crap about the Pinto affected very few cars. The Pinto was like all other small cars. The problem was that Ford, knowing they had a problem, and decided to do nothing. Well, that can be said for a lot of manufacturers back in that time. Oh, all right. James Diamond's here from Southern California. He's got a 7.3 F-250 4x4 I-beam. I still have the tools for the 4-wheel drive for to take the front knuckles apart on that truck. I bought them special when I worked at Meineke way back in the day, and still have them in my toolbox. I haven't used them in probably 3 decades. And what part of Southern California? I love Orange County. I've been to Orange County twice, and both times, it's just absolutely amazing there. I completely get the reason for wanting to live there, except for the traffic and the taxes, probably. Next mention that Ford memo came out where Ford consciously decided it was cheaper to pay for the desk than making it the car safer. That is sad. And that kind of was the way of the world back then. Randy asked, what do you think of the Power Probe? I have one. I use a lot. I have a knockoff Power Probe. I do like it a lot. It is dangerous in terms of some modern vehicles. If you try backfeeding a circuit with all the modules on it, you could fry some things if you don't know what you're doing. But I absolutely love having that tool, because there's a lot of applications where, so I'll give you an example. If you're working on trailer lights or something like that, and you're trying to power up circuits and see where you have a broken wire or where things are breaking down, you can do that easily. See if it's a vehicle problem, see if it's a problem with the trailer. So I like it a lot. James mentioned it's a 4-pin socket. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, there was a special socket that fit over the front hub with the axle nut, as I recall. And you needed that to disassemble the front hubs on a Ford F-250 from, let's say, the late 80s. All right, he works in Orange County. So James works in Orange County, and he lives in Lake Eisenhower. I've never been to Lake Eisenhower. I'm not familiar with that, but it sounds like an amazing place. Orange County, if you've never been there, it's definitely a place you should put on your bucket list, because it is just amazing. When you leave John Wayne Airport and you just smell the smells, and I think it's that flower, colitas, I don't know. if I got that right, but just the smell of the area, it's just awesome. Oh yeah, if you had to do rotors, you had to knock out all the studs. I kind of remember doing that. Jennifer's never been to Cali. I was kind of apprehensive at first, but I tell you, after I went there and both times in Orange County, it's absolutely amazing. I completely get it. It's near Temecula. So once again, there's another town I'm not familiar with. Mexican Spec said it's not the time to go. I don't know, Max. Both times I was there, now granted it's been a few years. First time was about 8 years ago, and then the last time was about 6 years ago. I went there once with Isuzu commercial trucks. We got to tour. We even went to Hollywood. We went to not Universal Studios. That's where I went on vacation this last summer. We went to Time Warner or Warner Brothers Studios, and everything about the trip and everything about California, like I said, with the exception of the cost and the traffic. I did get to drive on the 405, Max. Got to drive on the 405 with Jaguar I-Pace. Jeremy says he works at a hospital. What section of the hospital are you in? In a specialty? Oh, and James is asking what valley you grew up in. Mex has got to have a little bit more of a valley accent. That would be fun. Like Valley Girl accent. Just teasing. Oh, say it. Mex says that there's more than one. San Fernando Valley is where Mex grew up. Now lives in Mexico. And by the way, I hope you don't mind, Mex. Tomorrow, Mexican Specs having a live stream. He and his better half are driving a vehicle back to the U.S. border. Mexican Specs sells vehicles that are Mexican spec, hence the name, that you can't find in the U.S. They have options that you've never seen in the U.S., and he finds the cleanest and nicest examples of these vehicles and sells them to people in the United States, and they are able to import them. It's pretty cool. So, oh, Jeremy works at the front desk, so you're in the intake part basically at the hospital. And the girls that Mexican Spec used to grow up with, or did grow up with, 10th grade, it was insufferable. The Valley Girl accent, yeah, that became popular, probably at least mainstream, in the 80s and 90s with shows such as 90210 and everything. James mentioned that he is technically in Temecula Valley. I'm probably killing these names because I'm not familiar with the towns that you described. If I showed you some of the town names in Western New York, I'm sure it would be a lot of fun. Okay, so Mex just mentioned that the tariff that went into effect is affecting his business because there is 25% tariff on cars that they're importing, and the customers have to pay that. Jen said they used to make fun of the girls that had the Valley Girl accent. Oh, I think it's relevant. I know Mex said it was insufferable as he got older, but got to give it's unique, right? Everyone's accent, people say that I have a Western New York accent because of certain words that I pronounce, and it's probably true. They seem normal to me. Somebody that just came up in my YouTube feed, she's from, I want to say, West Virginia, just like the vice president, and for whatever reason, the name has escaped me of what part of the country, the Appalachia, if I'm even saying that correctly, Appalachia. She has an Appalachia accent and says things in certain ways that's familiar to that area. I actually like that a lot. I like that part of traveling. I like hearing people's accents from around the world. Everyone, we may all speak English, but everyone has a different take on things, a different saying. Like if you're talking with somebody in England about a car, they're talking about the boot, the trunk. We call it a trunk, they call it a boot. A lot of different, a garage instead of a garage. Just those different subtleties about speaking that make it unique and make it fun, I think. Oh, cool. Jeremy said he used to work at the Air Force. So, Jeremy, one of my last live streams, I had a gentleman, his name on YouTube is B36 Peacemaker. Now, a lot of my family was in the Air Force. They have friends, and going to the U.S. Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, has been the thing that I've done since I was little. And seeing the B-36 in the Air Force Museum, it almost seems surreal because it's the largest bomber ever built. I know it's not car related, but it's very interesting. And I watched a movie that my friend who retired from the Air Force gave me to watch called the Strategic Air Command. And it's all about the B-36 in the beginning, and he ends up going to B-47s. But seeing that plane fly in the movie was really amazing. You can see it on Amazon Prime. If you've never seen it, it's from 1955. Pretty significant movie about the B-36 and the Strategic Air Command. So, and James says that he's from a small town in Orange County. Everyone asks where my accent's from. I like the different ways people speak. I remember growing up, there was a girl that moved from Tennessee to Western New York, and she had a distinctive Southern drawl, Southern accent, and she said things that were interesting to me, like, if you were say, I'm planning on going to the store, or plan on going to work on this engine, or plan on fixing this car. It's not that, I shouldn't have said fixing, because she always said it, I'm fixing to go to the store, like getting ready or whatever. I'm fixing to go to the store is how she used to say it back in the day. And I found that interesting. I'm friends with her on Facebook, but I haven't seen or talked to her in 30 years. It would be interesting to see how her accent has changed, because I know one of my cousins lives in Texas, and the last time I saw him, he has a severe Texas accent. I don't know how to. Oh, and Lillian is here. Yes, and Lillian has a distinct accent. Can I say where your accent's from, Lillian? Anyways, my cousin who grew up in Western New York, has been in his Air Force and works for the Sheriff's Department in Texas, he has a completely different tone. Now, probably to native speakers where he lives, probably has an accent from somewhere else, but he clearly does not have the accent. I haven't seen, I don't see him for 10 or 20 year gaps because, as the family gets bigger and time moves on, everyone goes their separate ways. But when I heard him talk, I'm like, whoa, totally different. So Lillian's got an accent from Russia. She's got a Russian accent, more specifically Siberia. And I'm sure there's a difference between somebody who grew up in Siberia compared to somebody who grew up in Moscow. I would guarantee, if I were a betting man, and sometimes I am, that there's a difference in the dialect and the words used in Siberia versus Moscow. And what would be more mainstream? Well, just like the Southern drawl or Appalachia would be considered a fringe accent to mainstream. You wouldn't typically see somebody. I mean, look at the vice president. He's got at least nothing notable in terms of an accent from growing up in Appalachia, right? Appalachian Mountains or Appalachian Mountains. No distinguishable details in his words. I'm sure you can pick up on slight nuances, but everywhere somebody grows up, there's things that are specific to that area. And I find that interesting and fun. And Lillian's is it still considered Southern California? It's not as far as, or is that Central California where we're at? Oh, so my name's Jay, and I am in Western New York, Buffalo, the Buffalo area. Now, Nelson's here. Hi, good night. Lives in North Carolina. There we go. We got Carolina represented. So we're getting a pretty good range. I'm surprised that we haven't gotten any of our friends from Canada. I'm literally 20 minutes from Ontario in Western New York here. We have a friend that I grew up with that's in North Carolina, right in the Charlotte area. So where in New York did you grow up, Nelson? Just out of curiosity. Oh. Yeah, thanks for subscribing. I forgot about my Stream Elements thing being here. Only been to New York City once. My daughter's going there in 2 weeks with a school trip. So it should be interesting for her. Anytime I was in training with the guys that lived in Long Island, it would tell me the stories about the travel times. And it's sure like that in Orange County. The travel times in New York City area to get to work, like it was like if we didn't get out of there by 3 o'clock, that 5-mile drive would be 2 hours long. It was like ridiculous. There's nothing here in Western New York that I can't get to in 20 minutes. And if it's longer than that because of snow or whatever, everyone gets frustrated. So, yeah, traffic in Orange County is pretty wild. I did get to drive on the 405. We were doing it like 9 in the morning, so the traffic wasn't as heavy, but it was pretty hectic. And we had to keep up with everyone in the caravan because it was with Jaguar Land Rover for training, and they had everyone sign a disclaimer that we're not going to speed. And the first thing they did was take us over the speed limit, which I found fascinating and funny all at the same time. Your dad lived in Long Island. I did not know that. Jen's dad. Yeah, I've only been in New York City once, and I went with an Italian club, and I'm clearly not Italian, so I stuck out like a sore thumb, but it was fun nonetheless. We got to see a lot of cool things. Ellis Island. At the time, it was less than a year after 9/11, so I think that Statue of Liberty was closed, so we did not get to see that. We took the boat that went to Ellis Island, drove around it, but we didn't go in or on that island where Statue of Liberty was. But nonetheless, got to see a lot of cool stuff. Little Italy and Chinatown, a lot of neat stuff in Manhattan, Wall Street. Get to see a lot of cool things in New York City. Things that are cool to see, but not so much. I don't think I would necessarily want to live in that environment, especially with the things I do around the house. I don't think you can have old cars and fix things and do things in a big city like that just because of space. I know there's some shops, some old motorcycle shops and whatnot in New York City that were pretty legendary, but you did get to see the Statue of Liberty on your first trip. Remember what year that was, Jen? I did not, other than on the boat heading to Ellis Island and seeing it, that was as close as we could get, because within the first year after September 11th, everything was kind of locked tight for security purposes, I guess. That was, I guess, a regrettable thing, but I would have liked to see it. It would be cool to climb the stairs up inside it, if they even do that tour anymore. I don't know. 93 was then. All right. It was a year before I graduated high school. So looking forward this week, I'm going to try to get the Oldsmobile to run on its own fuel system. I have a boat tank that I can run it off of, and I want to get the engine to run on its own fuel system. I figure I'd feed it water from the hose to keep it cool. Obviously, I'm not going to run it for millions of years, but just to see how viable this engine is, I still think it needs a little bit of testing, and I want to see that smoke all go away. I really believe that smoke is because I soaked the cylinders down with oil because it hadn't turned or moved, although that engine was never locked up, which is really, really amazing considering it hadn't run in 55 years. And because just the humidity caused corrosion on the valves, that I had to cut all the valve seats and cut the valves, I thought for sure that it was something that would have caused the engine to lock up. So I kept the engine cylinders down. So Lillian got to see the Statue of Liberty. I never did. And James says he was born in 92. Well, I realized that I guess I'm getting old. 92, I was a sophomore in high school. Oh, Dan. Dan's here. Hi, Dan. Your first car was a 77 Olds. My first car was a 79 Oldsmobile. I had a hand-me-down that I bought from my brother, 79 Olds Cutlass, that I ended up taking the Olds engine out, and I put a 350 Chevy in. It was my first car at 16. Valve seals and guides. So, believe it or not, I did not find any valve seals in the engine, but I put O-rings on the valve stems because I thought they just disintegrated. I don't think it even had valve seals. The guides had no play in it. So I assume that this engine was taken out of a running vehicle back in the day. So you figure the car that it would have came out of, 37, in 1969 would have been 32 years old. So think of a car now that's 32 years old. It would be like a 93, right? If you had a 93 vehicle and you took the engine out of a running 93, that's essentially what this engine out of the Oldsmobile was. Dan said first car he drove was a 79 Delta 88 Royale. Another fun fact, Dan, one of my friends growing up, Amy, her dad had a Delta 88, 79, I believe it was a 79 too, that he stopped driving and it was parked in the backyard, and he gave it to us, and he just said, scrap it. And we brought that back. I pulled the engine on it just to have. It was a 350 Olds, and scrapped the car. But I did have a little experience with those. So Jen says 77 is a good year. I assume you're born the same year as my wife. And James says 88 Ranger. Okay, I had a Ranger of the same vintage, but I think mine was a 92 with a 5-speed also. My cousin ended up buying that for me. It was bright red, and at that time the paint would chalk up on it, the 80s like single stage paint, and buffed it out, and that thing looked like $1 million. So it was a fun little truck, probably built on a Mazda platform if I recall. It was a Ford badge, but I thought it was a Mazda platform of Rangers in those years. And it was a good little car. Good little car. Truck, actually. It was a truck, but you know what I mean. I had to fix I remember the spring tower. So it had like a riveted on or bolted on top spring tower, and that rotted out. And why do I remember having to get one to replace it? I thought I bought it brand new and bolted it on so that it was safe to drive because I was worried about the two-tone. Back in that time, two-tone was a popular thing. You don't really see cars. I don't remember the last time a production two-tone paint job that I can remember. Is that even a thing anymore? I remember when GM in the early 2000s was doing that paint that like faded, like I don't know what style it was called, but it had like a stripe or something significant down the side of it, and it changed colors or color ratio from top to bottom. And I thought, man, if you ever got a hit in a corner of that car, to try to mimic that paint would be pretty darn hard. Peter's first car was an unremarkable 67 VW station wagon. And his second car was a 67 Catalina 400 small. All right, two-door. So my vehicle that I took to my prom, my senior prom, my buddy Chuck's 63 Catalina that had a 289 in it. And it was a four-door, but keep in mind it was a 30-year-old car when I was going to my senior prom, and thought I was a cool kid. It was a cool car, no doubt. I do see those coming up on Marketplace all the time in that vintage, really cheap now. You can buy an old Catalina fairly cheap. I did. So we've had quite a few. This live stream has had a lot more viewership, in my opinion, than ones in the past, and I did not market this very well. Been trying some different things with live stream school, for lack of better, it was called boot camp, with a lot of interesting people that are in the YouTube world, a lot of different genres, and got to learn a lot of cool stuff. 8 lug wheels. You're talking, and I must have missed your last comment, Dan. Oh, 79 Delta 88. 7988 wouldn't have had 8 lug wheels, would it? Short stack referring to guitar, right? I had a short stack amplifier, 212s, Laney. So, yeah, my dad's first car was a 36 Plymouth sedan. Pontiac had 8 lug wheels? I've never seen that, Dan. Never seen that. Oh, 3 cars. All right, I get it. 7 lug wheels. I thought that F-150s had 7 lug wheels. I thought that certain F-150s or F-250s use 7 lugs. Do remember hearing or seeing it. Not very common, not at least anything that I've had or worked on that had 7 lug wheels. It's literally odd. But the 8 lugs typically, I didn't know Pontiac made that. Maybe they put those on because a lot of Pontiac wagons back in the day were used for ambulances. Because I remember a town ambulance back in the day, I'm talking 60s, 70s, used a station wagon with, rear seat. And that's how they took you to the hospital back in the day. Pontiac Bonneville 8 lug. That's amazing. I've never run across that. It's probably been, I've come across it. I'll have to look every time I'm at a car show now. I've never really been that detail oriented to look at the wheels on cars at a car show. Next said, he still had, oh yeah, he's got the 63 Fury Commando, 361 four-door sedan. I've never run across that engine either. Peter sold 7 lug F or 150 7000 series. Oh yeah, so growing up, my dad had a 69 Chevy wagon that had the rear facing seat. It had a 327 and a power glide in it. James says that it was a Ford thing. Yeah, 150 chassis, badged 250. Okay, so it was heavy half, I think they would call them back in the day. I don't know if they still do that or not, but oh, well, that's all right. Next. Oh, Tony has the engine in the Mule, the 361. I've never run across that displacement. You had the Kingswood. That remember I was asking about so the Kingswood had the 3 taillights on each side. My dad had, it must have been the Impala wagon or whatever, it had 2 taillights on each side. So that was the difference. So the Kingswood was the higher trim level back in the day. Was that considered an Impala? A Chevy Impala wagon? Because it was the same size vehicle in terms of frame, I think. Yeah, you got the Max, you got the one with 3 on each side. Taillights. So we're talking about Chevy Kingswood. If I had a picture, I would pull it up on here, but Chevy Kingswood had 3 taillights on each side. That was the higher trim level. The one my dad had when I was growing up had 2 taillights on each side, and that was the lesser trim level or a different model. But I thought in terms of the size of the body, the Kingswood and what my dad had were the same body other than trim. Maybe some of the features. Maybe it had a bigger engine. What engine does yours have, Max? My dad's had the 327. In fact, when the frame rotted out, my brother's friends, they bought that for the engine, and they took the engine out, and it lived on. They had the big Journal 327, and those were good engines as far as I like 327. I never owned one, but I would love to get a 327. It's the same or similar displacement as a GM 5.3 liter, and they were considered good hot rodding engines because the bore and stroke ratio. But I don't know if they made more power. 350 Chevy is pretty bulletproof and makes a lot of good power. I don't know. My buddy Mark swears by his 305s. He loves 305s. He loves them. I'm not a fan of 305s. I would always think of my dad's 88 Chevy van that never had a whole lot of power with the 305. We put a 350 in it. So, oh, and Max says they got a 80s 305 in it, 4-barrel. So, I remember when we thought my brother's 86 Monty SS with a 305 was like the best thing since sliced bread. You know, how, it's fast, it's this, it's that. Now, a 4-cylinder Honda gets more horsepower and more speed. James said a friend of his just got a K code 64.5 Mustang Hippo engine and discontinued blue. So my buddy just had a Mustang. I want to say it was a 66 at his shop, and we had a discussion. I remember you could buy 6-cylinder Mustangs of that vintage in the 60, like 65, 66 Mustangs, cheap. No one wanted them with the 6-cylinder. And he's like, no, now they're worth some money. Well, I think it's because everyone scrapped them. My brother's friend who bought my dad's old Chevy wagon, he said that back in the day, we're talking in the 80s, the Mustangs no one wanted. They all wanted Fairlanes. Fairlanes were what was it. If you had a 6-cylinder Mustang, they would scrap them all the time because no one wanted them. So I think now, because they became rare because everyone scrapped them, they're probably worth more money. Peter mentioned that 27 Model T, 64 Buick Nailhead, 4-door, 34,000 miles, 77 El Camino, 307. Now I had a 1980 Oldsmobile Cutlass that somebody put a 307 in, and I loved that engine. I thought that was a good engine. And Peter, did you mention in comments on my one video that you're looking for an engine for that 27 Model T? Are you the same, Peter? I apologize. And Mech said that high performance, hypo is pronounced hypo. IPO? Friend's wrong. Nobody scrapped Mustang unless it was torn in half. I'm telling you, in Western New York, it was not a popular, that year Mustang is not popular and not worth putting the money into. But your friend around, nobody scrapped a Mustang. Torn in half. I don't know. 6-cylinder Mustangs we used to see all the time for cheap, $2,000 or less in the 60s. But I'm going back a few years. Oh, high performance engine is what it stands for. Yep. 64 and a half. Now, I thought the half year would made it more valuable. But the 6-cylinder Mustangs, I remember, I'm going back 20, 30 years ago, we'd see them all the time not on Marketplace. Back then we used a swap sheet, but they would be in the swap sheet all the time, cheap. And everyone was like, oh, it didn't have a V8. And I didn't think a V8 swap back in the day was that popular. Now you can buy a whole rear half of the car. They sell a kit, fresh stamped steel. You could turn, the regular 2-door Mustangs into a fastback, and that's kind of popular. Dan said hello to Mexican Spec. James says that it comes with a race tack factory. Not too many cars back in the day came with a tachometer from the factory, that's for sure. And I'm assuming, Mex, for your live stream tomorrow that Mrs. Spec's going to be there. I ran into her on one of the forums on Facebook, and it was kind of ironic because I was sticking up for the vehicles that you sell. Oh, Model T coil tester schematic. Okay. So Peter, your Model T, you need to find out whether your coil is good or a schematic for it. I would think that Model T stuff would be pretty well. Oh, that was you, Mex. But if you ever seen the mechanic, I think his handle is the mechanic, where his buddies were messing with him with his bench vise. Every time they came to his shop, they would crank his bench vise down. And he got sick of that because when you go to use it, you have to, really refund it to get it open. So he decided he was going to mess with them, and he hooked a switch with an ignition coil off of a Ford Model T to zap them anytime they grabbed his bench vise and cranked it all the way in. It connected to a switch and it would zap them. That video was kind of funny if you've never seen it. It was significantly funny when you watch him get zapped by the ignition coil that he ramped up the voltage going into it, double that what it came from the factory, because he used a computer power supply of 12 volts. Okay. So Mrs. Spec doesn't do anything with cars, but she puts up with you. So that's something. Peter, how long have you had that 27 Model T? So one thing that came up in conversation over the last month or so, we were talking about, so my brother's friends and their dad owned a shop, and he used to specialize in restoring Model Ts back in the 80s. And I remember in 1985 to 86, somebody spending $55,000 on a Model T because they became very popular, trendy to have a Model T in the 80s. my friends and I now discussing that is because back when they were young, they probably wanted to own a Model T and couldn't afford it. So now they were older, had money, people would spend money to have a Model T. Now they're going cheap again. I see them all the time on Marketplace for $5,000 to $15,000, and they are like showroom condition because some can't go over 45 miles an hour. They have a hand throttle, they're manual transmission, no one can drive them. The grandkids inherit these things, and none of the family wants to deal with the maintenance or whatever for, and they sell them, and it has driven the price down because the supply and demand factor, I think, has changed it quite a bit. James says, you have an overdrive on your Model T. I didn't even know they made an overdrive for Model Ts. Peter's had his car for 8 years, which is a significant amount of time. Has it run and drove all those 8 years? Or are you still working on getting it back? I saw a really cool Model T at the Gas and Steam show out in Alexander, New York last fall. He had dug this thing out of the barn. It was like his father-in-law's from World War II, and he got it all, put together to run and drive. He was not making it a show car, just making it a driver, and it was just cool to see all the patina on it and everything. It was really interesting. So we were in the comments while we were driving, but that is the only time the internet service is in the middle of the desert. Yeah, I can't imagine how you got such good service while you guys are driving. I mean, I found if you guys are around tomorrow, Mex is going to be doing a live stream when they bring the car up from, typically it's from the southern part of Mexico up to the border with the United States, and him and his wife driving it to import it into the United States. And last time, Mrs. Speck was narrating and talking, and I think she speaks better English than Mex, but that's my opinion. And we got to see beautiful sights, beautiful countryside. You got to see a lot of the roadblocks and stops for the Mexican police that stop and are checking for illegal activity. That part of the trip you'll really enjoy. I really enjoyed it. I think you'll really enjoy seeing that. I'd love to go visit Mexico sometime, and I'm actually just seeing that makes me want to go. So, it's an aftermarket feature for the overdrive, but it's a must to get it over 40 miles an hour. Okay, that makes sense because they're all mechanical brakes and everything. They don't have juice brakes on a Model T. If you don't know what I'm referring to, they're not hydraulic brakes. That probably is an aftermarket upgrade. Okay, and Peter's making some mods. He's building 3 bodies that Ford never offered: Speedster, Pi Wagon, C Cab pickup. No overdrive. That's cool. Hey, Peter, if you ever want to feature your car, I would feature it on the channel. If you send me an email with pictures of it, I'd love to post them on here or post them on the channel. I've had, people in the comments comment. I'll put up my email address so you have that. But I'd love to share that with everyone if you want to share it. Definitely find unique things like that interesting, and I think most people do. So Mex said he's got to go through 6 military revisions on the way north. Wow, that is incredible. Yeah, virtually no brakes, Peter said. I've never driven a Model T. I can say in my recollection, I've never driven a Model T, driven some older vehicles from the 40s, maybe 1 or 2 from the 30s, but that stuff is like a dying breed. I remember 30s vehicles being popular in the 80s and 90s, somebody having, 34 Ford or 33 Ford coupe back in the day, typically all modded out, typically small block Chevy or a small block Ford, but there's not a lot of people that have those vehicles or interest in those vehicles. In fact, I mentioned earlier that the Oldsmobile clubs or things that I'm in on Facebook to kind of promote the 37 Olds engine. The one is called the Lost or the Forgotten Years of Oldsmobile. So they're not really even that popular, but I think because they're old and so, I guess, getting to be rare, I think it's cool. Have you ever driven a 3 on a tree? Yes, actually, I drove one a few months back for the first time in like a few decades. I was working on a 66 Chevy pickup, and they had a 3 on the tree. And once, this is about 3 years ago, at the Ford dealership I worked at, one of the techs, the gentleman brought in his beautiful Ford Thunderbird, and it was a 3 on the tree. And a young tech, he was early 20s, and I had to ask him, I said, you know, this car's got a manual transmission. You can drive a manual, right? Yep. I said, it's got a 3 on the tree. He's like, oh, yeah, no problem. And I was amazed because he was able to drive that. And that's pretty unique. I bet you there are the percentage of 20 somethings that can drive a 3 on the tree or have driven a 3 on the tree is probably fractions of 1% of the population. And back in the day, I remember in the 90s, 3 on the tree, you wouldn't see them too often because you're talking holdouts from the 60s and early 70s before they went to the 4 shift, and mostly everything turned into automatic now. Not too many 3 on the trees left. Max said that drove a 63 Plymouth Savoy for a while, and he needs a few parts before it goes to driving it again. What parts do you need? We got some people that are specific to Dodge that we know. What could be specific to a Plymouth Savoy? Now, is the Plymouth Savoy the same chassis as a Dodge Seneca, Max? Because my best friend's uncle was into Dodge Senecas, and they are a unique looking car, and find that stuff interesting. All movies get cars on the passenger side is because you couldn't get in a Model T on the driver's side. Ford made 15 million unmatched until the VFW or the VW. Have you ever been to the Henry Ford Museum, Peter? If you haven't, now that's near Jennifer. She's still here, Jen. That is an amazing, the Greenfield Village where you can drive in Model Ts and bus from the 30s in that era. It is really cool. And they have a picture of the 15 millionth Model T. I don't know if they had the actual vehicle at the Henry Ford too. For some reason, I thought they had the actual vehicle, but I definitely saw the picture because they painted on the side of it the 15 millionth Model T. So, oh, did you? Oh, you got a link there. Am I able to even click on that? I don't think I can. I can't click on. Oh, I don't know what it did here. I can't click on the link, but otherwise I'd play it on. I don't know if I would be able to play your video on here. I'm on your page right now, Max. If I can share my screen and play it on here. Is this the one that says lots of potential? If that's the one, I can, oh, it's a picture, not a video. Okay. Yeah, it won't let me click on that link or show it. If you emailed it, I might be able to get it through my email. But I cannot get that link to activate in terms of that. But I do have your page pulled up in case there was a video of the car so that I could show everyone. Because other than typing that all out, it won't even, I don't think it, yeah, it won't even let me copy it, which is weird. So you have the 1,460,000th Model T. That is quite amazing. I assume they can determine that by the year and the VIN number. I know there's guys that really get into those numbers and the specs and all that stuff. Not Mexican specs per se, but I do find some of that stuff interesting for sure. All right, I think I'm going to be able to pull up some of this stuff here. So let's do this. I'm going to download these, and then once I download these pictures from Mex, I'm going to bring them up so you guys can see what he's got. These carryalls are pretty interesting vehicles. They're built on a F-150 chassis, but they built similar to like a Bronco or a Suburban chassis on them. They made it a more, it's almost like a classic version of a modern SUV is the best way that I can describe it. So if I can present this in picture form on here, let me see if I can bring it up. So I'm going to get image files here, and I just have to pull up my downloads because Mex just emailed these things to me. All right, here we go. So this is Mex in comments. Can you talk about this vehicle? This is the Ford Carryall. This was a Mexican-produced Ford built on, I thought, an F-150 long bed chassis, similar to like a cutaway van chassis would be on like a modern van chassis, like they make ambulances and stuff out of, where they modded the body and the back from a factory in Mexico for vehicles like this. They call them carryalls. Peter said that looks cool. James Lobo, I'm not sure. Mex probably knows what that means. I don't. Okay, so Mex said it's a 76 Ford B100 carryall. Started life as a cabin chassis, and conversion company built the rest. So they built the back of the vehicle, and these were typically used, I think, as airport shuttles, church vans, that kind of thing. Maybe even school buses. They ever see a carryall school bus in the rural areas? It would be interesting to see. Let me see if I can pull another picture up of this, because this is kind of cool in real time. In fact, Peter, if you want to send me a picture of your car, I'd love to show everyone. If you email it to me, I do have access to my email. Mex just sent me these. And I'm assuming that's, now, Mex, do the plates stay with the vehicle once it's registered? That's a good question. In Mexico, because you talked about the license plate and the state that you're in, you know, drawing ire from the law enforcement when you come through, because if they see your plates are from the same area, they're less likely to be suspicious of it. But when you come through from another state, similar like if Dale drove up here and had Pennsylvania plates, you know, maybe the New York State troopers are more likely to give you a ticket just because you're not, you know, a resident. I don't know. But if they do have plates, do they stay on the vehicle for the life of the vehicle? Do the plates come with the car? That's my question to Mex. Because here, plates are associated with the person. They do associate to the vehicle, but you can move your plates from one vehicle to another. If you register that vehicle in your name, you have to have insurance and all that. How does it work in Mexico? I'm curious. Because that there are some interesting things that are different in Mexico than what I'm used to. Well, for example, the owners of the vehicle, it's almost like similar to the title to a deed to a house. You see everyone that's ever owned the car from the time of its inception. This is another look at that carryall. Oops. I'm going to go through this. So you cannot drive a truck into I'm not Guana Yarto. Don't kill me for the pronunciation. The cartel here does not get along with the cartel there. Interesting. So you got to play. So that's why if you have plates from one to the other, the plates stay with the owner. Okay, that answered that question. Jeff Russell, is the state of Mexico Estado de Mexico? Sorry, I never took Spanish, so excuse my pronunciation. Jason, this is the nicest one he's ever seen. James, if you still, I loved it. Or Peter, if you want to share that, if you want to share your car with us, I'd love to see it. You're welcome to email it to me at my email, and I would love to share that with everyone if you're inclined. You don't have to. I find those original cars, especially from the way back, very interesting in terms of the differences that we may take for granted or may not even have been aware of what things were like. For example, the hand throttle on the Model T, similar to a tractor. That's what it reminds me of, and maybe that's what it was based off of. You know, it was almost a version of cruise control, because you could up the throttle as you're driving and, you know, take throttle away, but it was all done by hand. So it's kind of interesting. Okay. Peter said that his was built the first week of May 1927. The last one was built in the third week of May 27. Wow. So at that time, they had ramped production up to a pretty high level where they were able to produce that many. And you had one of the last Ford Model Ts ever built. You have right now. And like I said, you're welcome to, if you email me at that email address that I have pulled up there, I would love to show that on here and post it, but that's up to you. I think everyone, I find that kind of stuff really cool. Oh, it's not done yet. Well, when it's finished. Fair enough. It's all right. If you're not ready to show it, it's fine. I show my projects as I go along the way, because even my garage sometimes is a mess with the stuff in it. It is what it is. Everyone's been there. All the tractor throttle was actually based off the T. Okay, all right. I did not know that. So it's Ford that set the tone for the throttle on tractors, not the other way around. I wonder who was the first company to make the throttle pedal, or was that common on all the other vehicles and Ford was the outliers with the hand throttle? I'm curious about that. It's something I've never researched, or I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about. It would be interesting to know, what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing, right? So, we've had a pretty good amount of people here for considering the last few live streams I did. We've not had as much content and as a lot of people talking. So I don't know if you guys want to keep going, I'll keep going. Or if you guys are ready to cut it out, I'll cut it out. Oh, so the Model T aftermarket. Help me understand that statement. The Model T used an aftermarket throttle, or they came up with that? Or are they referring back again to the overdrive situation? And I'm curious how that overdrive worked. Is that an electro-hydraulic overdrive assembly? I've seen them where they bolt up to the back of the transmission. You must have a shorter drive shaft, and then you either flip a switch or pull a lever, and then it engages to change the rotation of the drive shaft speed, like a gear reduction. I'm curious about that. Okay. James says that John Deere tractor had the first foot throttle. And the first floor throttle was aftermarket, Peter said. All right. So I'm learning stuff today. You guys are teaching me. I guess in my tiny brain, I always assumed that cars had a foot throttle, foot brake. And the only exception to it was a Model T. Now they're fairly common, but not too many. I haven't had any much experience with vehicles of the early 20th century in terms of previous to 1920. We had a 1927 Mack truck, 27, 28, I thought it was a 27 Mack truck at the Mack dealer I worked at that came with the building, and it had chain drive. So it had a rear differential mounted to the frame and a drive shaft from the transmission that powered the rear axle, but the rear axle didn't have leaf springs underneath it. It had like a wagon straight axle, and there was chains going from the rear drive axle to the rear wheels. That was kind of unique for the day. Yeah, every system in the T's were mechanical. And the ignition coil you had talked about, that was not a magneto, right? All right, Mex has got to go. All right, well, get it clean. We want to see a nice, clean car when you're doing your live stream tomorrow. We don't want it dirty. And definitely don't make Mrs. Speck do any of that. She has to put up with you, so. Yeah, early Mack trucks were definitely chain drives. Pretty wild, big, heavy chain. I don't even know if you could get a replacement link. I'm sure somebody has to make them because there's collectors out there for those trucks, but can't imagine what it would cost you to replace a chain on a rear chain drive Mack. Maybe you should good homework for next week's live stream. Next says she has to clean the inside of the windows. I'm easy to, yeah, you're easy to put up with. All right, we'll see it, Max. So it's a flywheel-based magneto. Interesting. And it's then obviously just the ignition coil that. So I wonder if there's any videos online. I'm sure there's got to be, to show how a Model T and or a magneto system worked back in the day, because that's something I'm not very familiar with. The only experience that I've ever, or closest I've ever been to a magneto, my buddy had a front engine dragster. Back in the day, he was running Stealth dragsters, and actually still has them. In Buffalo at a car show right now. He had a magneto in it, 392 Hemi, and remember it was breaking up, and they couldn't find the problem, and they finally figured out that the magneto was bad. 6 to 40 volts. All right, Max, we'll see you later tonight. We're always on typically at Uncle Tony's Garage live stream. We like watching that. And Max is on mod there too, so that's pretty cool. That's pretty wild. So I did want to share with you one last thing. So my one side project is building my friend's business's YouTube channel. He sells Caterham vehicles. I'm going to take you through this real quick. This is a promotion video that I did for his YouTube channel, and I'll put it down. I'll put a link down in the description. But this is a video that I made for his channel and a little bit about his business. So check this out. Okay, hold on, hold on. I don't think I'm at. I got to get this off. Sorry, it took. Sorry, it took a while to get out of that. Huh. Oh, horchata. I mentioned that Tony's drinking horchata tonight. I don't even know what that is, but I'm assuming that is a Mexican specialty. You like Toyo tires, James? I I don't have anything bad to say about Toyos, or I'm not like a huge fan either. Toyo tires are good tires. Pirellis I like. Oh, it's rice water. Rice water with sugar. That sounds more like a Japanese thing. Oh, At Zero is here? All right. Cinnamon rice milk. Never had it. I've been to Japanese restaurants where they have, the Japanese version of that, I would say, but I didn't know. Oh, he's going to say it in Tony's live. I got it. So we're coming up on we're just at the hour and a half mark. I want to thank everyone who came to participate. I appreciate it. Oh, you got Toyos on the car in the video. Okay, sorry. Yeah, that's so the Toyo tires are what the R-spec caterhams come with from the factory. And I thought you were saying that you had Toyos on your car. I get you. You're right. You caught that. And he was specifically talking about that in the one video. So, Peter, thanks for being here. James, thanks for being here. Jennifer, as always. Dale, I think you were here for a little bit. No, Mex. Who am I forgetting here? I'm scrolling through so I didn't leave anyone out. My dad was here. We got James again, Peter, James and Peter and Mex were. Dan Boyd was here. I don't know if he's still here, but we'll see you later tonight too. He's typically at the live stream at night for Uncle Tony's Garage. Lillian was here, Nelson, and if I forgot anyone early on that was here to visit, I apologize. But have a great week. Maybe we'll do this. Oh, Lillian is still here. Maybe we'll do this again soon. All right. Thanks for coming. Have a great week.